This is really special for me. You're the first Be Love interview I've done so far with someone who has written a book. So I feel like I've already gotten a chance to spend I've been reading this these last couple days, and so I feel like I know you more deeply now, which I guess is the gift of writing books.
I think so.
Helen Keller used to call her books her book friends.
Oh, how wonderful.
Yeah. So thank you for writing this book. It's really met me on a very deep level and speaks, I think, the message I'm trying to bring into being in my work, that love can embrace everything.
Completely. If it doesn't embrace everything, is it love?
Is it even love if it doesn't embrace everything?
Yes.
That feels like the question. So I bookmarked one part that I wanted to read to you,
Okay.
and then I thought maybe we could go from there.
Wonderful.
This is from the chapter when you're burying Grandma Mary with your friends, and this one paragraph just really spoke to me. The gentle yet confident actions of the women dressing Grandma Mary, and the soft murmur of voices as they discussed the right way to fold the handkerchief and tie on the belt, began to flow over me like a gentle wind or a beam of sunlight. My breathing deepened, my shoulders began to relax, and in that moment I realized we belong to the things we love, the same way the trees belong to the wind, and the fox kits playing in the forest belong to the sunlight. The things we love inform us and dwell in us and make us who we are. I love all of it. I love the way you weave in images from nature with the images of of ritual, of body. I mean, your writing is so embodied, Judith, which is just such a gift. And I think perhaps you can relate to this, as ministers, sometimes we're really in the words or we can get kind of lost in the mind,
Yes.
and it feels like you stay in the body, you stay in the experience of it. I wonder if you might want to say a bit about that, if the mind and the body and where love lives in all of it.
I think that's been the struggle of the church for centuries. Descartes wanted to divide the spirit and the body. The body was bad and the spirit was good. And yet we know we have been created in this body. This body is how we experience the divine, how we experience each other, and how we experience suffering and joy and all those things. So today, we're saying, oh, you cannot know God if you do not love the whole of God's creation. That means understanding our kinship with one another, with the trees, with the flowers, with all the people of the world, not just white people or not just Christians or not just Americans. We have a kinship that the divine embraces the whole of creation, which we are a tiny part of, but we are a very beautiful part of. And that is in our body, right?
Yeah. We wouldn't be here without them, would we?
No, no.
It's kind of funny to even imagine that distinction, because there's no reality without our bodies, and there's no reality without our this vessel with which to experience life. And I love in your book, I think you're all of that is true, and I think for a lot of us, yes, I can feel embodied with the trees, and yes, I can feel connection with, and yet with our own particular bodies, sometimes that's harder because of the ways we've been hurt and the stories we've been told about our particular bodies.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
seems like
yes,
that's
and
in a
yes, and yes. And the body holds those memories.
yeah.
The body, when we are children, and children are the most vulnerable, don't you believe? I mean, children are just such priceless, precious little beings, and yet they are the ones that experience so much suffering and pain when their parents don't have it figured out, or their grandparents don't have it figured out, or the community that they belong to is maybe operating on a fear level instead of a love level. So I think part of becoming love and being love and experiencing love is allowing love to heal the body, the memories, uh, the things that are still embodied in the body. You know, memories are powerful, and remembering is like stepping back into the body, right? The member, the member is the body, and so we do need to heal our memories, and God is quite capable of doing all of that if we just surrender into that place.
Yeah. Yeah, I have been, I think in reading your book and in my own journey, being able to connect with that higher love of God has been so vital. And it's tenuous at times because to go back into the body and feel the pain of the past, maybe pain you've never even allowed yourself to feel before, can be so overwhelming. And it seems like the only like your tagline, in the light of love there is no darkness. When you can have that love with you, you have enough strength perhaps to go into the darkness. And it's tenuous. And I think you articulate that in your book really well, that not tenuous in that it's going to collapse. Like, it's not tenuous in that I don't trust that all will be well, but it feels tenuous, it feels fragile. It's not like having faith in God takes away the fear, or it doesn't remove the work. And in some ways it allows you to face even more of the pain of life, because you have that light. You certainly have faced a lot of pain in your life. Are you still doing a lot of this hands-on intense work with humans?
Well, I was in Alacaca, the village of, well, actually Arctic Village, this last
Mhm.
spring. And yes, I was
Yeah.
leading a women's retreat that I call Walking in Beauty, Roots and Wings. And it's for that very thing. We gather a group of people together and we create a safe space. We use beauty to help us become confident enough in each other and in ourselves to express what those pains are. And then we begin to allow them to be healed. So yeah, I'm still doing it, not as much as I was at my age. I am slowing down a tiny bit, and yet my heart is there. I want to see the work continue because there is a lot of suffering. There's a heck of a lot of suffering in the world, but this other side of suffering is joy. So if love is expressing joy in your environment or in your home or where you are, then I think we have to go through the suffering in order to truly, truly express real joy. We're not just covering up. We're saying,
Yes.
okay, yes. And I think that's why it was so important to me to write about the gnarly stuff, the things in my life that have really hurt me. Um, Not to say, poor me, boo hoo, but to say, wow, I lived through that, and I not only lived through that, I didn't just survive. I feel like at 80 I'm thriving. I am I'm surrounded by love.
Yeah. And it's such an inspiration to others to know that their gnarly stuff is okay. I think that's, my trinity is be love, be honest, be useful. And I think the reality is it's very hard for me to feel loved and to express love if there isn't that level of honesty. It's when we're really truly fully known
Yeah.
that love can really really flow. I wonder if you might want to share, because you share in here a bit about early on working really hard, being exposed to a lot of people who were suffering, and the kind of the weight that placed on you at one point in your younger years. Has that weight, how do you hold that now? Have you found ways? One of my hopes with this podcast is to help people think about, like, what helps love to flow Like, what's helped you to hold the suffering of others as you've walked this path?
I think that's a really important question. I think, first of all, life and learning to be love is a practice. And, the Buddhists have given us that wonderful mindfulness practice. So now the Christians are beginning to say, even Christianity is a practice. We go out, we blow it, we come back, we we allow ourselves to be forgiven and to forgive ourselves, and then we go back out. I mean, it's this inner outer movement. And so, yes, I would say what's happened for me is my ego boundaries have become stronger. In other words, I go, that happened to them, but it's not the end of the world for them either. It wasn't for me. It gave me strengths. It gave me insights. It gave me confidence that no matter where I go, God, or whatever I call God, or whatever I experience of God, is going with me. I am not alone. Right? I think the other thing is being in a community, being surrounded by people that are on the journey with me. And those are real people, not saints from hundreds of years ago. These are the real dudes, my colleagues or my buddies or even my great grandchildren give me something more, a hope or a nudge to go out and keep doing this work. So those are the things that then allow me to go out and hear the stories again and not be so internally wounded by them. I have a confidence in myself now at my age and having done this work for many, many, many years. And I have a confidence in other people. And I'm not the only one that's helping create a safe container for this sorrow to be expressed in. So it's building community, it's coming back, and maybe even having to debrief. I've always said my husband, bless his heart, is my best debriefer. In our marriage, he's always been like the rock, solid, right here, right now, practical, one thing in front of another. I'm like the wind. I'm like, whoa, give me a high risk experience, and I love it. I drive fast. I do all these crazy behaviors that are not rock-like. So I need to come back and touch in to his strength. Luckily, we've been married 61 years, so he's still here. He's still doing his job.
That's wonderful. I love that description. And well, my husband, Ted Cole, who I know you knew
Yes,
in Alaska,
yes,
he's very rock-like too. That's a good description. Perhaps he's my rock as I float about as well. It's wonderful when you can find that balance with other people.
yes.
Well, and I love how you describe community and other humans and that it's not all up to you. I can feel that that's where I get triggered sometimes when I see suffering and I think it's up to me to solve this,
Right.
which is so ridiculous. But sometimes those are beliefs we carry with us,
Yes, yes.
but they can be let go. They can be released. Have there been, what would you say have been some of the things that have helped you the most to maybe release some of those more immature ways of being? Is it time? Is it therapy? Is it all the things?
I think it's all,
Journaling,
yes,
writing?
I think it's a lot of things. Just before I got on this podcast with you, I signed up
Mhm.
for a breathwork, healing the inner child breathwork experience. It's going to happen on Sunday with this group of people that I've done several of their workshops online. No, I am like the poster child for asking for help. I have done many, many things to bring me back to center, to strengthen me, to help me understand the world better. I'm an inveterate student of psychology and science and the issues going on in the world. The only thing I don't dabble in is politics because I just am not ready to do that yet. I have to kind of not, I can't take that one on. But
It's okay to not take it all on.
yes, I think so too.
Yeah.
I think
Well, I love
prayer,
that,
prayer
And care.
meditation, centering prayer, studying what is Cynthia Bourgeot doing? What are the centering prayer people doing? What are they thinking? All of those things are ways of developing a greater understanding of how the world works, how this incredible universe works. Then we are a part of it. We are a wonderful part of it.
We are a wonderful part of it. Well, I love that asking for help, that you're wonderful at asking for help. I'm not so wonderful at asking for help, but I'm learning to become wonderful at asking for help
Good.
because I think it's actually what creates community. You know, if we're always giving, then we're not really making ourselves vulnerable. It does feel like maybe all of my successes thus far have been when I've asked for help. Does that seem pretty essential to you for what creates community?
That's a huge learning, and I can't remember exactly when I began to learn it. Probably in my early relationship with the people at St. Mary's Episcopal Church in Anchorage. We were in groups together. We had group therapy, couples counseling together. I mean, we were so bonded. But what we learned is that when I am vulnerable, it allows other people to see me as a human being, not as a princess on a pedestal, someone brilliant and funny always and always with it, having it together. And when I see someone vulnerable, the same thing happens. I go, oh, we become accessible to each other. And it's not that we have to rush in and fix anything, because we don't. Resilience is when they get to practice fixing it themselves. But we can walk with them. We can be with them as companions. And there's a wonderful fellow named Wolflet. I believe that's his name. He does a lot of work, grief work. And he has a whole teaching on what it means to be a companion when we walk with someone. And isn't that a wonderful image? I mean, can't you see Jesus doing that? He walked down the street. He walked from village to village. He was with people where they were when they were there. And so I think that's also part of our job, is to simply show up, to be here and trust that whatever we need is going to be here. We're going to, Jesus said that. Go ahead and go. Go. I will be with you. Don't worry about what you're going to say. I will give you the words to say, right? And so when we feel that urge to be vulnerable, yeah, we can trust that Jesus is saying, yeah, this is a time to tell your story. It's okay. People don't need to see you as a princess or the one that has it all figured out.
Yeah. Vulnerability is so important, and it does feel like so essential to the walk of faith. I mean, it's quite a vulnerable thing to trust that God will put the words in your mouth and to show up without a plan and a
Right.
script and all of the pieces of the puzzle. I love how much more people are talking about vulnerability and the strength of it and the power that it brings. It really feels like it's gotten this funny word, vulnerability. Like maybe we need a new word for it. But it really feels like it's just about showing up, like being the being that God created you to be,
Yes,
without any subterfuge or, faking, which
totally.
is so much of we're so tempted to want to, we want to put our best foot forward and we want to do a good job. So it's not necessarily a bad thing that we want to be prepared, but it can kind of veer into not showing up as we truly are. And I'm always curious about that balance, especially in ministry, because they want you to be prepared when you show up to do a funeral, and you don't want to be winging the whole thing. You want to have a plan. How do you live in that balance of kind of being prepared and showing up with vulnerability?
I actually think when you spend time being prepared, maybe you write your sermon out, or maybe you have a talk to all the family members and what's the family dynamic is going on with the person that's died, then you can show up and you'll know then if you're going to preach the sermon that you wrote or if you can just set it aside and preach from your heart. So I think being prepared is a really powerful thing, and it's an okay thing. And then
They're
when
sort of
you
both.
see that's not quite what I need to say in this situation, then you can allow yourself to say what your heart is telling you needs to be said. So I'm a great one for being prepared. And you you see that in my early, I said, I've always got chocolate bars. I've always got peanuts. I've always got, Johann Tauler in my backpack. Or, I mean, I had so many things I would carry with me to the villages. And one day I realized, and it took many years, it didn't happen overnight. I can show up. I can just show up. It will be there.
And maybe that's part of the journey, the preparation when it's needed, and then the showing up when it's needed.
And letting
The
go.
key for me seems like the letting go, the being in the moment to know when it's time to let go and when it's time to bring forward what you have. I like the Carl Jung quote. He talks about like learn all of the techniques, but then when you're with a person, just you're this person and that other, you're just together as two people and show up as yourself.
Yes.
And feels like that's the essential work of life. And we have all of these roles that we play and these techniques that we learn, and they're all useful and beautiful. This retreat that you're getting ready to lead, is this a format of leading a retreat that has come from your heart? Has it been developed with others, or?
Well, my boss and my dearest friend, the Reverend Dr. Anna Frank, she was the first Native American woman ordained a priest in the Episcopal Church, and I think in the whole Anglican Communion. She's in her 80s now as well. And about 10 or 12 years ago, she said to me, Judith, I want you to write a healing retreat to help us heal from the effects of boarding school. And so that began, I literally sat down and began to write what would a women's retreat look like with Native women that allowed people to really talk about the multiple generational effects of that trauma that happened about 3 generations ago, and it's still going on. So trying to interrupt the trauma response and trying to build resilience and build community in villages, that's kind of the work that that Anna and I started together. But it was her impetus. She's the one that said, Judith, go do this. And that's how it started.
Has that been how a lot of your ministry has happened? Have people pointed to Judith, do this? Has it been a lot of other people kind of shaping your calling? Has some of it come just from you or from God? What's been the movement of your path, or the motivation?
I was trying to figure that out, I think, by writing this memoir. Um,
Hmm.
and so part of me has come to believe that I am a person that loves adventure. I am, I read adventure stories as a child, and I had a incredible adventure story from my childhood, and that is in 1878, when the Bannock tribe went on the uprising in southern Idaho, a Shoshone man that was called Bruno John by the white settlers ran miles and miles to warn my great grandparents that the Bannock warriors were coming to kill white settlers. And they hid in a cave and they lived. So my birthright has come from a cross-cultural friendship. And that was a hero story in my family. My grandfather always said, we are alive because of Bruno John. We are alive because he was a friend of my grandfather's father and mother. So as a child, Indians were the heroes. So they were the ones, they were also the villains. I mean, because the Bannock tribe was trying to get reparation for what had happened to them by the white settlers, and they were doing it the only way they knew how to do it, which was by going on the uprising. So I think I've always had this affinity for working with Native people because of that hero of Bruno John. But then when I began working with Native people, I realized how much I had to learn. And I think that's the story I was trying to tell in my memoirs, that I went to serve, but I was served. It's this incredible, it's like a little miracle happening. You think you're showing up to do something And then you realize you're the beneficiary of all this knowledge, the traditions, being welcomed in, even though the early Christian churches did their fair share of terrible things, denying people, children especially, to speak their own language. The churches were part of the boarding school program many times because the great epidemics that the missionaries and the gold miners and the explorers brought to Alaska killed, smallpox and the Spanish flu and those kinds of things did kill the older people, the elders, the tradition bearers, the shaman, the spiritual leaders, and often killed. If a parent went to the trading center to buy something or to trade furs for food or any, axes or different things, they would often be the ones that would pick up these diseases and they would die from it. So it's been characterized as the Great Death in Alaska, where over half of the native population died from these introduced diseases.
Well, I think that's another piece of the story that I appreciate so much is your wrestle with the mess of it all and your willingness to be served by this community and to be in their pain and to stand in the priestly role. I think you touch on something that I think a lot of us are trying to do right now, which is to make sense of our history, to carry forward that which is good, but to also see with clear eyes that which was harmful. And it's really beautiful to hear the stories of these indigenous communities doing that, reconciling the native traditions, the Christian traditions. It's not a perfect match, obviously, but in the weaving and in the grieving and in the showing up, there's love in it. How do you feel now? How are the native communities doing now? Is there even more weaving together of native traditions and Episcopal traditions, or how's that dance going? I know you can't really speak for all native Alaskans, but
what I am seeing is a resurgence of pride in native culture and language. So there's a language revitalization program going on. And so in a sense, that has to happen first. You can't really come back as equal partners until the wounded partner is healed enough within themselves and within their cultural identity to say, bad, you did a bad thing. I mean, that was horrible. And so I think we're in a place where the white people, the Christian churches, have got to stand there and take it. We've got to take the whipping that we deserve for what happened. And the people that are going to take it are going to be the people that actually didn't do it. But we've got to do it anyway. It's a symbolic. I am a white woman. There's no doubt about that. So I play a symbolic role in standing there and having people say how hurt they have been by people who look like me and sound like me, or maybe they don't quite sound like me. In those days, of course, they were men. We have only been ordaining women in the Episcopal Church for 50 years. So, so we're in a really even more exciting place right now because people are standing up and saying, we don't want you. We want to do it our way. I believe in the great pendulum swing, and I think that's where we're at right now. I have every confidence that when all people realize who they are and that they're all created by this God who created everything or was part of the great creation, I think we'll all come back stronger and we will have a relationship where we companion one another. It doesn't mean you have to believe what I believe. It doesn't mean that I'm going to believe what you believe. I'm going to experience the divine through my own cultural lens. My grandparents were Episcopalians. They were Anglicans in England and when they first came to America, and then became Episcopalians. So that's the lens I'm going to bring with me, even though I practice a lot of meditation techniques. I practice a lot of things, and I've been gifted with a lot of things. I've been gifted with a rattle. I've been gifted with sage. I've been gifted with these things because of people wanting to share their traditions with me. But I am not going to become that. I am I'm going to remain whom I'm created to be. And so that's the learning. That's the cutting edge. How do we respect? I guess that's the word. How do we respect ourselves enough to stay rooted in who we have been created to be? And then how do we respect others enough to not be frightened by that or trying to make them be like us? If you look through every culture in this world, holy cow, there's nobody that hasn't been trampled on by the domineering or dominating culture. That's the history of humankind. But we are cusp of a new era. I just know it, and I think you are a huge part of that. And I think all the things you're doing with your Helen Keller collaborative, I think, and me sitting here, just a little old Grammy writing stories, I think we are on the cusp of that.
I'm so happy to hear that. I hope so too. And I'm so pleased to hear that you're seeing that in the Indigenous community in Alaska, the bringing back of the language and the bringing back. And it makes me think of your description of developing your own ego boundaries and how helpful that was for your own work. And it does seem like that's the work of all of us on the planet right now, is to develop our own boundaries of who am I and what do I need and how do I speak, and when we have that, we can be together.
Right.
And this sort of history of domination is like a disrespect of ego boundaries. It's saying, oh no, you must be like us to exist.
Yeah.
And we know that's not true. We just know that's not true anymore. I don't know why we keep playing this game.
I don't either.
But it's just not true. It's just not true. That's exciting. And I'm proud. I mean, how do you feel? How is the Episcopal Church, or how is space being made for these conversations? Is it kind of organic, or is there a real kind of reconciliation process happening in the diocese? Or
for a number of years, we've tiptoed up to that.
Yeah.
I don't know that we have gotten it right yet. I did go to our national convention a number of years ago, and going and seeing who was there, seeing literally the rainbow of people, seeing the diversity of people that was there, totally renewed my faith and respect in the Episcopal Church. We've always kind of prided ourselves in being the via media, the middle way. We're not way over here to the right. We're not way over here to the left. We are like the people that kind of hold the balance. That's been our message for a couple of 100 years for sure. So when I saw all these wild people, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. I can buy this. I can stay in this faith, because we are putting our money where our mouth is. We are practicing what we believe in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we are in, what is it called? A dangerous position right now, because I think there's probably a group that wants to stay more traditional. And, we have the same people that wrote the Constitution of the United States wrote the Constitution and canons of the Episcopal Church. So we have a lot of rules and laws and steps you have to follow. And as you know, reading my book, how I wrestled with things like who gets to give the blessing, who gets to say the prayers over the bread and wine, who gets to do that. Okay. So I think there's still a large contingency of people in the Episcopal Church that want all those rules. They feel really safe with them. And then there are people who are saying, we need to open this place up. We need to blow the lid off of this place. We need to let God and the divine blow this place wide open so that there really aren't so many rules and laws. And I don't know where we're going to go with that. We have a brand new presiding bishop, and I don't know. And then we're also faced with, just like a lot of the other organizations in the world right now, with financial issues, the inflation and all the cost of doing business the cost of having all these committees. It's going to be a dangerous, exciting time.
Yeah.
Because you can build stronger walls. I mean, that's one option, right? Whenever an organization is threatened, you can build a stronger wall, make
Yeah.
stronger, or you can let the walls
Yeah.
tumble and trust that the divine is in charge.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and as you said, and we all have different identities, different work. It's what's I mean, I'm a Swedenborgian and I'm married to an Episcopalian, so I find a lot of comfort in that. Like there's one endeavor, there's one way to do this, one way to hold and the Episcopal Church, I have so much admiration for it. I had so much joy when I was had my time working at St. Mary's. I was so proud seeing Bishop Budd speak, in the National Cathedral. The reality is your institution and its rules and its structure has puts you in a position where you hold a lot of power in the world. That's a good and that power that could be used responsibly and good. So there's gifts to that. I, on the other hand, am in this tiny little denomination with kind of no structure and anything is possible. And there's gifts to that, but then there's also challenges.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's good to remember we're all trying to figure it out, and there's and it's unlikely that any one institution has to be the home for every person. But how can we be in relationship, as you said, how can we be in relationship with every all people and recognize the goodness and the love that exists in all people and then do our part for the whole. Those are those are very much my questions, and I'm glad you're seeing the hope that I have for the world. And I'm glad you share this hope that I think, as challenging as these times are, there is this rising consciousness, rising awareness that we're all different and we're all humans and we all exist on one planet together. So maybe we should, you know, sort it out or figure out how to love this life that we've been given.
Yes. I think the call is to practice being love and practice being honest with what we see and what we feel, um, and to recognize the gifts that come when we serve others. So I think your mantra is really powerful. So that will be my prayer. I think silence is a way of growing and trusting in this new dawn, this new era that's happening, that we are on the cusp of. I think we're actually falling over into it. And then just keep going. And don't be afraid to teach the young people how to love, how to be generous, how to not be afraid, how to laugh, and how to cry. All of those things. I think I do sadly see a lot of self doubt in the world with young people and a lot of self referencing and me. And I think the internet has played a huge role and the pandemic when everyone was forced to stay home. But I think that all is just making things happen more quickly, because I think people are recognizing those things are not filling their heart. There's no peace. There's no feelings of safety. So I think those have just helped to bring about this new consciousness that I do think we are entering into. So anyway, that is my prayer for sure.
Well, as a mother of an 8 and 10-year-old, it is definitely my prayer as well. And I get very overwhelmed with their media use. And I sometimes have the same perception, like they're just going to get tired of this more quickly than I did, that maybe they're going to reach that limit or recognize that end because they're just so exposed to so many things. And it's heartbreaking and it's a very different way to parent than my experience of being a child. I grew up in the age of you can be whatever you want to be and women can do anything and just go after your happiness and go to college and it will all be provided for you. And it's just such a different world right now. It really feels very uncertain and they feel it and they watch cartoons about zombie apocalypse. I mean,
Right.
They don't, or the end of the world, that awareness is in them, and it's such a challenging time. They don't want to go to church, sadly, with my husband to the Sunday school. They rebel against it, and I it's heavy on my heart. I definitely, reading your stories of the village, I was like, why couldn't I just live in a smaller village? Maybe everything would be fixed if I was in a place where there was more community. I really long for that. And and at the same time, I think that's what my calling is, well, how can we create it? Because I care about the next generation. And it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot of things. I don't have solutions for any of it. But I don't know. I appreciate you sharing the sense of the turning. And every time I hear people name that, it gives me confidence, because if we're moving out of this stage of domination and it all being one way, that means we really have to learn how to all be different and all be in communication. And that's a very different skill set than I'm pretty sure my parents didn't have that skill set and their parents didn't have it. So it's a new thing. And I do have some hope and faith with my children that they are actually learning those things. They're learning at school about like progress, not perfection, and how to understand people who are different from them. And so I'm I'm somewhat hopeful, but I'm also overwhelmed and scared. What do you have any other like seeds of hope, especially around how are your grandchildren doing? Are there some little glimmers of hope with that future generation that you see?
I think there are glimmers of hope.
Yeah.
But I've tried to provide here in Seldovia a little a little place where they could be with nature. Even though we do have a television set, there's a lot of opportunity to be on the water, on the ocean, climbing a mountain, sitting with trees, picking blueberries and making jam. So I think I think those are like going to camp, church camp in the summer, or going to any kind of a camp where you get out and you literally have to maybe catch your own dinner or something. So I think that we do need to provide children and adults with those kinds of experiences. And I don't think we should be afraid of, for instance, this platform that we're on today. There's a lot of intimacy that I experience being here talking just to you, even though I know it's going to be put out for the public to hear. And I think we can do that with gatherings. We can have a weekly gathering that's a prayer gathering, and where we maybe read poetry or scripture or have silence or light a candle, together, or sing. So I think we've just got to commit ourselves to play with our children in the trees and to sit in silence with people who also are feeling this divine nudge to become the light, to become, as Meister Eckhart said, to surrender all of ourselves and let God be God in us. What does God want? God has a dream for this world, and beautiful, and it is light. It's not going to be an apocalypse. It's going to be a transformation.
And it comes through
us.
each of us,
Yeah,
each of us, in
little.
our bodies and our experience and our awareness. And I love that you name that intimacy. I feel that as well talking to you. And I think that's that's my hope, is as much as technology can, everything that can be a blessing or a curse, right? And
Yeah.
technology can be a curse, but it also can be a real embodied connection. And I'm always amazed at how close I can feel to people in a Zoom meeting. And
Yes.
I almost feel like it's actually a kind of a nice intermediary too, to getting to those deeper connections, because we're in our house, so we're kind of safe. It's a little bit less of a threshold than I'm sure, walking into one of your healing retreats.
Yeah.
So that's another step. And
Yes.
my hope with this ministry is it can bring people together virtually, but then we could also, I'm actually heading to Michigan to do a retreat tomorrow. So I'll get to be with some other humans in the flesh.
Wonderful.
It's a powerful way to be together, and we need to find new ways to be together, it seems to me.
We are finding them. We are finding
And
them.
there we go. We are finding them. That's a good reminder. That's a good reminder.
I
It
think
is happening.
I think for people like you and I who are we are out on the edge. We are kind of trailblazers. Hope is always that we will find a balance,
Yeah.
that we won't be complete. I am a complete raging extrovert. I love crowds. Give me 100 people. Yes, I love being surrounded by people. So my learning has been to learn to be quiet, to learn to be alone here in a small village. And so that will always be our
Yeah.
cutting edge, is going to
Yeah.
balancing our natural inclinations. And
Yeah.
when we do that, then I think then our roots are just going to go deep, and our prayers are going to go wide. And yeah.
Yes. I believe that. Well, and the heart of the message for me has been, and what I'm bringing to the world is my beingness. It's the aliveness of God in me that I am able to share with others. So
Yes.
if I'm throwing it all out there to try to solve all the problems of the world and getting completely depleted, then it's not going to go so well.
Right.
So there's an attunement all the time to what do I need and what am I ready to give up. I think I'm probably an extrovert, probably not as extroverted as you, but marrying my husband, who's the most introverted person on the whole planet, has made me, in comparison, I feel I'm definitely more extroverted, and I think I'm longing for community, which is what's motivating this journey. So thank you for being in community with me, Judith.
Yes. I want to leave you with a little something, a little practical thing, and that is, because my ministry was always going out and coming back, going out and coming back, I had a coming home ritual when my children were little. And the coming home ritual, I would come into the house, throw my duffel bag in the laundry room, pick up all the towels and stick them in the washing machine, wash them and get them into the dryer, and then I would make an apple pie. So that when the children, I have all sons as well. We have 4 sons. So when the children came home from school and I'd been gone for a week or 10 days, the first thing they would smell when they opened the door was cinnamon and sugar wafting to the front door, apple pie cooking. So develop a coming home ritual so that your husband will know you're really coming home, you're coming back, and your children will know that you're coming back. And it can be anything, but for us, it was an apple pie and having the laundry started.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for that. That's definitely part of my learning is, how to be in and out and connected. And it's quite, I'm knowing that you figured it out and managed it is giving me confidence that I will figure it out and manage it too.
You will.
And I love it when we both are in